Welcome, dear listeners, to Fated Hearts. What if your very voice was a weapon? What if the one person you were destined to love was the same person sworn by law to destroy you? In a world of wolf shifters bound by ancient laws, one woman has spent 7 years in silence, hiding a power so immense it was outlawed a century ago. She is a ghost in her own pack, a servant who is seen but never noticed. He is her alpha, her fated mate. He is haunted by a mysterious plague destroying his pack and a phantom heartbeat he believes is the key to its survival. He searches for a cure, never realizing the answer is in the quiet girl who serves him in silence. But when a ruthless challenger threatens to tear their pack apart, her silence is no longer an option. To save the man she loves, she must unleash the storm within and face the consequences. Prepare for a story of forbidden love, ancient secrets, and a choice that will change everything. This is the heartbeat of a silent storm. In the Red Thorn Pack, your scent was your life. It was your signature on the world, a declaration of lineage, strength, and purpose that every other shifter could read as easily as their own name. For 7 years, the scent worn by Jasmine had been a carefully crafted lie. It was a bland, forgettable whisper of chamomile and clean earth, the scent of a low-ranking nobody. It was the scent of invisibility, of someone who worked in the gardens and cleaned the Alpha's lodge before dawn, a ghost who was seen but never noticed, her eyes always downcast, her presence as unassuming as a shadow. But beneath the magical binding that held her scent in place, a binding renewed each night with a painful, silent ritual, her true aroma was a roaring fire. It was the scent of lightning-struck pine, of rain-soaked ozone, and of ancient, wild magic. It was the mark of a thorn witch, a wielder of the outlawed heartsinger magic, a bloodline thought to be extinct for a century, a people blamed for a catastrophe that had nearly destroyed the pack. Her silence was the lock on that cage. A single spoken word would shatter the binding, and the storm inside her would finally break free. The Alpha, Kian, was a man walking on a knife's edge. A mysterious blight, a sickness the healers had grimly named the Fade, was poisoning his pack's spirit. It was a slow, creeping decay that leached the color from their world, turning their legendary ferocity into a brittle, anxious rage that frayed the edges of their society. Fights broke out over trivial matters, mates snapped at each other, and the joyous sounds of pups playing had been replaced by a tense, watchful quiet. Kian was haunted by a ghost heartbeat, an impossible, intoxicating rhythm of wild magic that he sometimes felt pulsing deep within the territory. It was a faint, maddening drumbeat of life in a dying land, a song of power he instinctively knew held the key to the cure. He spent his nights poring over ancient maps and his days walking the territory, chasing this phantom, never knowing he was hunting the quiet girl who tended his home, the one whose silence felt like a held breath, the one he could never seem to forget. Their unspoken connection was the story's heart. As his fated mate, a fact both were aware of on a primal, agonizing level but could never acknowledge, Jasmine felt his struggle as her own. When his frustration mounted, a phantom ache would settle deep in her chest. When he felt a flicker of hope, a corresponding warmth would bloom beneath her skin. For Kian, it was a constant, frustrating pull toward a shifter who seemed so unremarkable, yet whose mere presence in a room inexplicably soothed the gnawing effects of the fate on him. He mistook it for a trick of the mind, a desperate hope creating a phantom solace. This fragile piece, this silent, painful dance, was about to shatter. The pack's desperation had given rise to a challenger, a brutal enforcer named Draven. He was a charismatic predator, his words weaving a tapestry of fear and righteous anger. He preached that the Fade was not a sickness, but a curse, a punishment from the moon goddess for Kian's soft leadership. The only cure, he claimed, was a return to the old ways, a blood ritual known as the Ritual of Severance, a culling of the pack's unworthy to appease their angry deity. He had convinced half the pack, those most consumed by fear, and his influence spread like the poison it claimed to fight. The ritual was set for the coming full moon, now only 2 nights away. Jasmine knew the truth. The blight wasn't a curse, it was a parasite, a thing of dark and hungry magic, and the Ritual of Severance was not a cleansing. It was a feast. Draven wasn't trying to save the pack, he was orchestrating its damnation. Tonight, the crisis reached its peak. Draven's followers, emboldened by his rhetoric, cornered a small group of shifters loyal to Kian in the main clearing, accusing them of spreading the blight through their weakness. They dragged them toward the unlit cleansing pyres. Kian was miles away on the northern ridge, lured away by a false report of a rogue attack, a clever distraction. No one was coming to save them. Jasmine stood in the shadows of the ancient oaks, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. She could let them burn and keep her secret, her life. She could live another day in her silent, gray world. Or she could step into the firelight and become the monster her pack had feared for 100 years. She looked at the terrified faces of her packmates, at the wild, fanatic gleam in the eyes of their accusers. She made her choice. She took one step forward, parted her lips, and prepared to speak the one word that would either save them all, or be her last. The air in the clearing crackled with a wrongness that clawed at Jasmine's throat. It was the scent of fear, sharp and sour, mingling with the dull, lifeless odor of the Fade. Under the cold light of the full moon, Draven stood like a dark monolith, his chest puffed with self-righteous fury. Before him, 3 young shifters knelt, their bodies trembling, their spirits flickering like dying embers. Tainted, Draven's voice boomed, a gravelly sound that grated on the pack's raw nerves. The weakness spreads through them. The Alpha is too soft to see it, too weak to act. But I will not let our pack rot from within. The ritual of severance begins with them. His 2 hulking followers, Silas and Jorik, grabbed the youngest, a girl named Cora. She couldn't be more than 17, her scent still sweet with the last traces of puppyhood. A whimper of pure terror escaped her lips, a sound that lanced straight into Jasmine's heart and shattered her resolve. Silence is safety. Silence is life, the vow, hammered into her by her grandmother since she was a child, was a physical weight in her chest, a cold stone of dread. But as she watched Cora's eyes, wide with a terror that was beyond pleading, she saw the faces of her own parents, exiled and lost. What was a life lived in silent, lonely safety if it meant watching her pack be torn apart by a lie? What was her heart for, if not to beat for them? Draven raised a hand, a signal to his men to drag the girl toward the pyre. For the strength of the pack, he roared, a cry echoed by the fanatics in the crowd. No, a voice whispered. It was barely a sound, raspy and thin from 7 years of disuse, yet it carried across the clearing like a thunderclap in a silent room. Every head snapped in its direction. Draven froze, his hand still in the air. His followers stopped, their sneers faltering. Jasmine stepped out of the shadows. The moonlight bathed her in silver, illuminating the defiant terror on her face. She had spoken. The dam had broken. For a breathtaking second, nothing happened. The world held its breath. Then, it shifted. The bland, forgettable scent that had cloaked her for years evaporated like mist in a fire. From her, a scent bloomed, a staggering, impossible aroma of ancient forests, rain-soaked earth, and the raw, untamed power of life itself. It was the scent of a heart singer, a scent no one had smelled in 100 years, a scent from the darkest of their legends. A collective gasp swept through the pack. It was more than a scent, it was a feeling. Every shifter, from the strongest enforcer to the smallest pup, felt a jolt, a warm, vital pulse that pushed back the cold tendrils of the Fade. It was the ghost heartbeat, no longer a faint echo, but a living, breathing rhythm that resonated in their very bones, a song of life they hadn't realized they had forgotten. Draven stared, his face a mask of disbelief turning to pure rage. You. He snarled, the word a venomous hiss. The forbidden blood. The abomination. Jasmine ignored him. Her eyes were locked on Cora, on the fear that still clung to the young shifter. She lifted a hand, her fingers trembling, and parted her lips again. This time, she didn't just speak. She sang. It was a single, resonant note, a sound that was more feeling than hearing. It poured from her, a thread of liquid gold, and washed over the 3 kneeling shifters. The tremors in their bodies stilled. The frantic, panicked energy around them calmed, soothed by a wave of pure life. The dullness in their eyes receded, replaced by a flicker of hope. She had just healed the Fade's touch in plain sight. She had just signed her own death warrant. And miles away, on the cold northern ridge, Kian felt the world drop out from under him. The phantom rhythm he had been chasing his entire life didn't just get stronger, it exploded into a symphony, a homing beacon of power and distress that screamed a single, undeniable word into his soul: mate. The single, perfect note faded, but its effect lingered in the air like the warmth of the sun on a cold day. The young shifter, Cora, stared at her own hands, flexing her fingers as if seeing them for the first time. The sickly gray tinge to her skin had vanished, replaced by the healthy flush of life. It was a miracle. And it was treason. Draven recovered first, his shock curdling into a mask of triumphant fury. This was better than he could have planned. He didn't just have a scapegoat now, he had a monster. See, he bellowed, pointing a trembling finger at Jasmine. The source of the poison. A heart singer. The law is clear. It was written in the blood of our ancestors. The Alpha is sworn to execute any with this stain on sight. She has revealed herself. She has sentenced herself. The pack stirred, a low growl rumbling through the crowd. They were a sea of confused, frightened faces, caught between the miracle they had just witnessed and the century of fear they had been taught. The old stories, the ghost stories told to scare pups, were of heart singers whose power went wild, turning the land to dust and shifters to stone. You're wrong, Jasmine said, her voice stronger now, imbued with the power she had so long suppressed. The Fade is not a curse. It is a poison. And you, Draven, are the one who brought it here. Draven laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. The witch tries to deflect. She performs her parlor tricks and expects us to forget our laws, our history? She is the blight. And she will be purged. He lunged, his claws extended, aiming for her throat. Jasmine didn't flinch. She didn't have to. A black-furred missile of pure muscle and rage slammed into Draven from the side, sending him flying. He hit the ground with a sickening crunch, rolling to a stop near the pyre. Kian stood over Jasmine, his body a tense wall of protective fury. He had erupted into the clearing, a blur of motion and raw alpha power that seemed to bend the very air around him. His chest was heaving, his eyes glowing with a terrifying, golden light. He had felt the bond roar to life and had crossed miles of rugged territory in a time that should have been impossible, driven by a primal force that superseded thought. He turned his head slowly, his gaze sweeping over the stunned pack, over Draven struggling to rise, and then finally, his eyes landed on Jasmine. The fury in his expression melted away, replaced by a storm of emotions so raw and overwhelming it stole her breath. 7 years of confusion, of soul-deep longing, of maddening frustration, all crashing into a single moment of earth-shattering recognition. The ghost heartbeat. The quiet girl in the gardens. His mate. You, Kian breathed, the single word a universe of pain, wonder, and impossible love. Draven staggered to his feet, wiping a trickle of blood from his lip. Alpha, he growled, his voice a low challenge. The law is absolute. What will you do? Will you uphold your sacred duty, or will you let this creature poison the heart of our pack? A low growl escaped Kian's chest. The mate bond, raw and new, screamed at him to tear Draven apart for the insult. He had to make a choice. Now. Jasmine felt the war in his eyes. She knew the agony of his position. The law is the law, Kian, she said softly, her voice laced with a resignation that shattered his heart. She was giving him an out. She was offering him her life to preserve his authority. Do what you must. And in that moment, his choice became clear. To hell with the law. To hell with tradition. He had spent years feeling like half a soul, and now he had found his missing piece. He would not be the alpha who destroyed his own heart. He took a deliberate step, positioning himself more fully in front of Jasmine. My duty, Kian declared, his voice ringing with an authority that left no room for argument, is to the life of this pack. Jasmine has just proven she can heal the Fade. She is under my personal protection until I have discovered the true nature of this sickness. Is that understood? It was a command, not a question. He had defied a century-old law. He had chosen her. Now get out of my sight, Kian snarled at Draven. All of you. Go. The crowd, a mixture of terrified, confused, and newly hopeful, began to disperse, melting back into the shadows of the forest. Draven gave Kian one last look, his eyes burning with a hatred that was a promise of future conflict, before turning and stalking away. Within moments, the clearing was empty, save for the 3 young shifters who were now huddled together, and the 2 souls at the center of the storm. My chambers. Now, Kian said, his voice rough with emotion. He grabbed her arm, his touch both a command and a desperate, grounding connection. He needed to get her somewhere safe, somewhere private, before his own control shattered completely. The heavy oak door of the Alpha's chambers clicked shut, sealing them in. The sound was unnervingly loud in the sudden quiet. Kian released Jasmine, pacing away from her like a caged wolf, running a hand through his dark hair. The room was large and Spartan, dominated by a huge, unlit stone fireplace and a desk littered with maps of the territory. The air smelled of wood smoke, leather, and him. It was a scent she knew intimately, a scent she had silently breathed in for years, a secret form of self-torture. 7 years, he finally bit out, his back still to her. His voice was a raw, ragged sound, stripped of the Alpha's command and filled with a vulnerability that shook her. 7 years I have felt you. A whisper. A ghost in the back of my mind. I thought I was going mad. I thought the moon goddess was punishing me with a broken bond. He turned to face her, and the pain in his golden eyes was so profound it made her chest ache. You were here. The whole time. You were right here. Jasmine wrapped her arms around herself, a fragile defense against the sheer intensity of his gaze. I couldn't. The vow. The vow, he repeated, the words laced with a bitter irony. The vow that kept you from me. The vow that had me searching for a phantom while my own mate was polishing my boots and serving my meals. He took a step closer, his voice dropping. Did you feel it, Jasmine? When I was near you. Did you feel the bond pulling at you, tearing you apart, the way it did me? Tears welled in her eyes, and she could only nod, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. The years of silent agony, of watching him, loving him from a distance, of feeling the mate bond as a constant, dull ache, it all came pouring out in that single, silent gesture. That was all he needed. In 2 long strides, he closed the distance between them. He didn't touch her, not yet. He simply stood before her, his powerful frame eclipsing everything else. He lowered his head, his forehead coming to rest against hers. He breathed her in, not just her scent, but her very essence, the heart singer power that was now singing a vibrant, joyful song in harmony with his own spirit. It's you, he whispered, a sound of pure, unadulterated wonder. It was always you. A sob escaped her lips. His hands came up to cup her face, his thumbs gently wiping away her tears. His touch was electric, a jolt of warmth and life that chased away the last of the shadows. The mate bond, a live wire between them, pulsed with a need so strong it was a physical force. He tilted his head, his lips hovering just inches from hers. The world narrowed to the space between their mouths. And then, a sharp, authoritative knock echoed through the room. Alpha Kian, a stern, aged voice called. The elders demand a council. You have defied the sacred law. You will answer for this. You will answer for her. The moment shattered. Kian pulled back, a low growl rumbling in his chest. But Jasmine's hand shot out, her fingers wrapping around his wrist. Wait, she whispered. Feel with me. She closed her eyes, reaching out with her senses. She felt the pack's fear, but also a new, fragile thread of hope. She found the signature of the elder at the door, Thane. It was tangled with grief and fear. He wasn't malicious, he was wounded. His mate had been one of the first to be taken by the Fade years ago. Andraven's followers were using his pain. Jasmine's eyes snapped open. His name is Thane. He is grieving, and his fear is honest. But Draven's loyalists are using him. Don't meet his anger with yours. Uphold the law, but bend it. Kian stared at her, stunned. In less than a minute, she had given him a complete strategic and emotional analysis. A slow, fierce smile spread across his face. Bend it, he repeated. He strode to the door and pulled it open. Elder Thane stood there, backed by a hostile crowd. Thane, Kian said, his voice calm and respectful. I understand your concern. It is born from a pain our whole pack shares. The unexpected empathy caught Thane off guard. Kian, the law. The law will be upheld, Kian interrupted smoothly. And the law dictates a trial. Not a summary execution. Jasmine will be held, and she will be tried before the full council, as is her right. As she has also shown an ability to combat the Fade, an ability we desperately need, I am placing her in protective custody, pending this trial. Her cell will be my chambers. Her guard will be me. I will not let fear make me sacrifice our only hope. He had bent the law into a shield. He held Thane's gaze. Now, Elder, if you will excuse us. We have a trial to prepare for. Without waiting for a response, he closed the door, leaving the Elder and the crowd standing in stunned silence. The lock clicked into place, once again sealing the two of them inside, a team against the world. The click of the lock was a definitive sound, shutting out the world. Kian leaned his back against the door, his eyes closing for a brief moment. He had a mate. He had defied sacred law. He had all but declared a cold war. He opened his eyes and looked at Jasmine. A trial, she said softly. They will all be listening. I don't know if I can. You won't be alone, he cut in, his voice rough. We will face them together. He reached out, his fingers gently brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. You saved me out there. You showed me a better way. I only listened, she replied, her eyes locked on his. Jasmine, he breathed her name like a prayer, a question, a plea. This time, it was she who closed the final inch between them. She rose on her toes, her hands coming to rest on his chest, feeling the steady, powerful thrum of his heartbeat beneath her palms. It was the boldest thing she had ever done. You called me Jasmine of the Red Thorn Pack, she whispered, her breath ghosting across his lips. I haven't been that person in a long time. Thank you. That was it. The last of his restraint crumbled. His mouth finally claimed hers. It was a collision of worlds, a release of 7 years of pent-up longing, frustration, and a love so deep it had survived in silence and shadows. It was the alpha claiming his mate, the heart singer finding her anchor. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless, foreheads pressed together, gasping for air that tasted only of each other. I am not letting you go, Kian vowed, his voice thick and unwavering. I don't care what the law says. I don't care what the elders demand. You are mine. And you are mine, Jasmine answered, her voice filled with a strength she had never known she possessed. That night, they did not share the alpha's bed. In a gesture of strategic wisdom that humbled him, Jasmine laid a thick wolf pelt on the rug before the dying embers. We gave them a story, Kian, she had said. For tonight, we must live in it. He took the armchair, positioning himself as her guardian. They talked for hours, their voices low in the dim light. She told him of her lonely childhood, of the vow of silence, of the crushing loneliness of feeling the mate bond without being able to act on it. He told her of his own struggles, of the burden of leadership, of the maddening hunt for a ghost he could never find. It was the careful, quiet weaving of two souls into one. As dawn approached, he lifted the sleeping Jasmine from the floor and laid her gently on his bed, tucking the furs around her. He would not sleep. He would stand guard over his mate, his partner, his queen. Meanwhile, in the reeking back rooms of the pack's armory, Draven plotted. Kian wants a trial, he snarled to his followers. Fine. But by the time the council convenes, the pack will be begging for her head. His plan was insidious. We will accelerate the fade. We will target the livestock, then the outlying farms. We will create a panic. They won't see an alpha protecting his mate. They'll see a traitor protecting the monster that is destroying them from within. Jasmine awoke to Kian staring out the window, his body rigid with tension. A frantic pounding rattled the door. Alpha. It's the livestock. They're gone, turned to dust. Draven's plan had begun. He's trying to frame me, Jasmine said, her voice tight. He wants the pack to think my power is a beacon, attracting the fade. And it will work if we don't get ahead of it, Kian countered. The council will convene at sundown. We have until then. Everything you know, Jasmine. I need it now. A new fire lit in her eyes. My grandmother hid the old texts, the scrolls the pack thought were burned. They are in the elders' library, in a hidden compartment beneath the very floorboards where the council will convene. She explained the truth, the Heartsingers were not a curse, but the pack's immune system. The Fade was a parasite that fed on life force. Her ancestor hadn't lost control, she had lost a fight by trying to overwhelm the parasite, which only made it stronger. Draven knows this, she concluded. He'll provoke me at the trial, hoping I'll make the same mistake. She began to sketch a complex diagram. This is a containment field. It isolates the parasite, severing it from the host. I can activate it in the library, but I will be completely vulnerable. You have to defend me. Kian placed his hand over hers, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across his face. For a few seconds? Jasmine, for you, I can hold off an army. The council chamber was a suffocating pit of fear and hostility. The 5 elders, with Thane at their center, sat on a raised dais, their faces grim and unreadable. Below them, in the center of the room, stood Jasmine, alone. The chamber was packed, shifters lining the walls, their collective anxiety a palpable, crushing weight. Draven stood among them, a smug, confident smirk on his face, watching the proceedings like a wolf waiting for a lamb to be led to slaughter. Kian stood to the side of the dais, his expression cold and hard as granite. He was playing his part, the reluctant, duty-bound alpha. He met Jasmine's gaze for a fleeting second, a silent, shared breath before the performance began. The law is clear, Elder Thane began, his voice echoing in the tense silence. A century of peace has been built on the exile of the Heartsingers. You, Jasmine, have confessed to carrying this forbidden blood. By law, there is no trial, only a sentence. And yet, here we are, Kian's voice cut through the room, sharp and authoritative. Because that same forbidden blood is the only thing that has shown any effect against the Fade. My duty is to the survival of this pack, and that duty demands we understand this power before we destroy it. He turned his cold gaze on Jasmine. So, let us understand it. Tell us, Jasmine. What is a Heartsinger? Jasmine flinched, playing her part perfectly. She looked small, terrified. It is a connection, she stammered, her voice just loud enough to carry. To the lifeblood of the pack. To the land. A connection you used to hide yourself for 7 years, Kian pressed, his voice merciless. What else have you hidden? Nothing, she whispered, looking at the floor. Lies. Draven's voice boomed from the crowd. She lies as easily as she breathes. Make her prove it. Make her show us this power. Kian's eyes narrowed. A demonstration. A fine idea, Draven. He looked back to Jasmine. You claim your power can heal. Then heal something. Heal me. He strode toward her, stopping directly in front of her and holding out his arm. With his other hand, he drew a ceremonial dagger from his belt. Before the council could protest, he drew a swift, shallow cut across his own forearm. Blood, dark and rich, welled up instantly. The pack gasped. Heal it, Kian commanded. This was the first test. Jasmine knew Draven was watching, waiting, hungry. She took a shaky breath and placed her fingertips just above the wound. She sang a single, quiet note, a focused thread of power aimed only at the wound, reminding Kian's own body how to heal itself. The pack watched in stunned silence as the skin began to knit together. Within 10 seconds, the wound was gone. A wave of awe rippled through the room. But Draven laughed. A parlor trick. She heals a scratch while our livestock turn to dust. She is weak. Perhaps, Kian said smoothly. Or perhaps she is holding back. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I have heard whispers of old texts. Forbidden lore. Where are they? She looked up at him, her eyes wide with feigned terror. I don't know what you're talking about. Another lie. Kian roared. He grabbed her arm. You will tell us, or so help me, I will let Draven have you myself. Where is the forbidden lore? Stop. Elder Thane commanded, but Jasmine broke, as planned. I'll tell you, she cried out, tears streaming down her face. I'll show you. It's in the library. Under the council floorboards. A collective gasp filled the room. Draven's smirk faltered. She is lying to save her own skin, he yelled. Then we shall see, Thane declared, his curiosity and duty overriding his fear. The council is suspended. We will reconvene in the library. Kian released Jasmine, giving her a shove toward the exit. Move, he snarled. As she stumbled past him, her eyes met his for a fraction of a second. The message was clear. Phase 1 is complete. Now comes the war. The procession to the library was a grim, silent parade. The elders led, their faces a mixture of skepticism and dawning apprehension. Kian followed, his hand never far from Jasmine's back. Draven and his followers trailed behind, their presence a dark, menacing promise. The library was a circular room lined with shelves of scrolls, the air thick with the scent of aging parchment. In the center, beneath a high, moonlit skylight, was a large, circular table. Well, which? Elder Thane's voice was heavy with disbelief. Where is this a proof? Jasmine knelt, her hands trembling as she pressed 3 specific points on the floorboards. There was a soft click, and a section of the floor popped up. It was real. Kian lifted the panel. Beneath, nestled in velvet, lay a dozen ancient scrolls, sealed with the sigil of the first lore-keepers. He unfurled one. The illustrations were terrifyingly clear, a swirling, shadowy entity, the Fade parasite, being fought by a figure wreathed in light. This changes nothing. Draven's voice was sharp, desperate. It is a record of their failure. Or a warning against their enemies, Kian countered. Now, Jasmine said, her voice rising, no longer a whisper but the clear, ringing tone of a lore-keeper. She stood up, her gaze fixed on Draven. Now you will see the truth. She slammed her foot down on the floorboards. A wave of her energy pulsed into the floor. Faint, silvery lines flared to life, racing outwards to form a luminous, intricate cage of light. The containment field. It was active. Draven stumbled back, a look of pure panic on his face. The dark, parasitic energy he wore like a cloak flickered as it was choked off from him. A shadowy, oil-slick duplicate of him began to peel away from his body, writhing and screeching with a sound that vibrated in their very souls. It was the Fade parasite, exposed, starving, and furious. This was the moment. The parasite was trapped, but Draven was not. With a roar of pure rage, he launched himself, not at the parasite, but at Jasmine. Kian, now, she screamed, her entire being focused on holding the field together. She was a statue of pure will, completely defenseless. Kian had been waiting. He met Draven mid-lunge. The collision was a brutal boom of flesh and bone. He wrapped Draven in a crushing hug, his body a living shield. "Finish it, Jasmine." Kian roared, holding the thrashing, clawing Draven. She took a deep, shuddering breath and pushed. The silvery lines of the field pulsed once, brilliantly, and collapsed inward on the parasite. There was a soft pop, like a soap bubble bursting, and a profound silence. The dark energy was gone. Draven's strength vanished, and Kian shoved him to the floor, where he landed in a heap, panting and powerless. The trial was over. The silence that fell was the silence of a world remade. The Fade was gone. The air was clean. Their spirits felt light. Kian was at Jasmine's side in an instant, his arm wrapping around her waist as she swayed from exhaustion. "I have you," he murmured. Elder Thane stepped down from the dais, his face a mixture of awe and deep, soul-shaking shame. He stared down at Draven. "You," Thane's voice trembled with a grief that had finally found its true target. "My mate, the others, you fed them to that thing. You let us blame the very magic that could have saved them." He turned to the pack. "The old law is dead. It died with our ignorance." He then turned to Jasmine and bowed his head, a gesture of profound respect that sent a shockwave through the room. "Lorekeeper," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You have cleansed our home. You have honored your ancestors. You have saved us from ourselves. On behalf of the elders, I ask for your forgiveness." "There is nothing to forgive, Elder," Jasmine said, her voice clear and steady. "Today, we all chose to stop being afraid." Kian looked down at Draven, his face hardening once more into the mask of the Alpha. "You are hereby stripped of your name, your rank, and your place in this pack. You are no one." Guards hauled the now nameless shifter away to the cells. The threat was gone. The pack was cleansed. Kian turned his full attention back to Jasmine. In front of the elders, in front of the entire pack, he gently cupped her face in his hands. "The trial is over," he said, his voice soft but clear. "The law is rewritten. Now, there is only this." He leaned down and kissed her. It was not the desperate, frantic kiss from the night before. It was a kiss of profound respect, of boundless love, and of public declaration. It was the Alpha claiming his Alpha, the king bowing to his queen. A slow, hesitant cheer started, then grew, swelling into a joyous, roaring ovation. It was a cheer for their Alpha, for their newfound hero, and for the promise of a future free from the shadows. Later that night, the lodge was quiet again, but it was a different kind of silence. It was peaceful. Jasmine stood with Kian on the balcony of their chambers, looking out at the territory. The land itself seemed to breathe easier, its heartbeat steady and strong, a rhythm she could now feel in perfect harmony with her own. "It's so quiet," she said, leaning her head against his shoulder. "The storm is finally over." Kian wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close. "No," he whispered, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "The storm is just beginning." She looked up at him, confused. A slow smile spread across his face, his eyes twinkling with a love and pride that filled her entire world. "You are the storm, Jasmine," he said. "And you are going to change everything." And so, the silence is broken, and a new era begins for the Red Thorn Pack. The parasite of fear has been cleansed, not by brute force, but by the courage of one woman and the alpha who chose to trust his heart over a century of law. Jasmine and Kian's story is a testament to a love that survived in shadows and a power that was never a curse, but a gift waiting to be understood. Their greatest challenges may yet lie ahead, but their fated bond will surely see them through. Thank you for listening to this presentation from Fated Hearts. If this story captured your heart, please show your support by hitting the like button. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next journey into destiny and desire. Let us know in the comments what you thought of Jasmine and Kian's story. Your support helps this channel bring more tales of fated hearts to life. Until next time, may your own heart beat strong.